I am the world's biggest super fan.
You're like a super fan.
Welcome to the Business Superfans Podcast. We will discuss how establishing business superfans from customers, employees, and business partners can elevate your success exponentially. Learn why these advocates are a key factor to achieving excellence in the world of commerce. We discuss the invaluable insights of business owners who have successfully implemented the strategies in the book to build their own team of devoted superfans. Gain insightful knowledge from the experts who create applications that help you create passionate superfans. This is the Business Superfans Podcast with your host, Freddie D.
Ready!
On this episode of the Business Superfans Podcast, I'm joined by Timothy Kalinowski, president of Lore, is a transformative brand strategist and creative leader with over 25 years of experience shaping brand narratives into powerful customer experiences. A visionary in strategic storytelling, digital marketing, and content production, Tim has led high-impact campaigns for industry giants like Kohler, Starbucks, Jockey, Miller Coors, Caesars Entertainment, and Mercury Marine. His expertise in crafting purposeful narratives drives meaningful connections, brand elevation, and measurable growth. At Lore, Tim leads a team of 46-plus professionals specializing in brand strategy, web development, content creation, and data-driven digital marketing. Under his leadership, Lore has pioneered AI-driven storytelling, setting new industry benchmarks while achieving exponential growth in social media engagement, lead generation, and client acquisition. Previously, as communications director at Kohler Courier, he managed a global team of 70-plus and oversaw $30 million plus in production budgets, expanding brand visibility and engagement across international markets. With a passion for brand transformation and a strong blend of creativity and business acumen, Tim continues to mentor teams and develop groundbreaking campaigns that captivate audiences. His insights on strategic storytelling, product innovation, and digital optimization inspire brands to build lasting connections and achieve lasting market impact.
Welcome, Tim, from Lore to the Business Superfans Podcast. How are you this morning, Tim?
Hey, Freddie D. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
So where are you calling in from? What state are you in?
We are based in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. I used to spend a lot of time up in Wisconsin. I used to be in Chicago, and that was my sales territory when I was in the software industry back in back day. So what part of Wisconsin?
Actually, not too far from Chicago. We're just outside of Milwaukee. We've got a location down in Milwaukee and one up in Appleton. So Fox Cities in Wisconsin, it's kind of Northwoods, which is beautiful and untouched. Yep. And then you have three major metropolitan, the Fox Cities, which includes Green Bay, Madison, and Milwaukee. So we cover two of those three, and Madison just becomes an easy commute for everything we do there.
Yeah, no, been to Madison, been up to Appleton. Used to have a reseller up there years ago, so quite familiar with the state. Cool. So Tim, let's talk about where did Lore come about? What's your story? How did it all come about?
Depends on how much time we have, but prior to starting Lore, which this year is going to be our 10th year anniversary, which has been a terrific and kind of wonderful journey. And I've learned a whole lot. Somebody that thought they knew a lot before they started, I've definitely learned a lot as a business owner, not just as a marketer. But after spending some serious time in large agencies and corporate life, I really saw that there was a gap in the marketplace in terms of how companies and agencies work together and how often agencies worked on either trying to be really clever and creative or just checking boxes and getting things done. And what I found after some of my experiences with great brands, the story is where everything was at. And there was no better way than to start a business where I could help companies really capture what their story is, who they are, and how they communicate with their customers and interact with their customers, more importantly, because so often companies get lost in themselves. So if you're going to start telling stories, what a better name than Lore. However, the coming about it was kind of a strange happenstance. We were going through all kinds of strange word exercises, and Lore was in there, but it almost felt too easy. And then there was a conversation about sometimes if you're starting a business, you just have to be very optimistic and count a little bit on bluebirds and butterflies to get yourself going with some wide dreams. And it made us look at a book of bird etymology. And most people don't realize this, but a bird has nostrils on the tip of their beak, and that is actually called the lore. And so
Really?
and so that kind of checked the box for us, and we went, yeah, that's perfect. That's what we wanted to see in terms of just making sure it was the right name. It just kept coming back to it. And after that, the rest was history, so to speak.
Very interesting story of how you came up with a pretty cool business name. So what are the services that you offer at Lore?
Well, I think of us as an interdisciplinary agency where we're very full service. What happened was we started as telling people stories and helping them get to the truth on how to communicate with customers. And we started getting asked questions like, how do you produce that? And for a hot minute, it was, we'll just hire a production company and we'll work with them. That's what most agencies do. And then turned into, well, we have the experience. We can start our own production company. And once you make it, where do you put it and how does people see it? So then we turned into a social media company and a media company. And pretty soon it was web development. We just kept adding services to service our clients better. And so it's allowed us to be a global company. Our clients primarily are coast to coast in the US, but we do work in Europe as well, and some in Latin America and Mexico. So it's been a fun journey.
What's your specialty that you guys do? You know, you do a multitude of things, but you guys got to love one thing that's your favorite thing.
Yeah, everything runs through the story. That's the hook every time is companies come to us to help clarify who they are and how they need to speak. And sometimes it's to expand into a new market. Sometimes it's just because they don't know. Sometimes it's to enhance the relationship with the customers they have, but it all starts there. And that's been the simplest way to explain what we do is if we can help you understand how to interact with your customers better, the next question is usually, how do you execute that? How do you make it? And those things all roll into that.
So let's go into how important is a story? Because when I look back at when I was selling manufacturing software in the Midwest, we were working with some significant organizations, Caterpillar, Eden Corporation, and companies like that. But it was the successes that our customers were having using the technology that we were marketing, that became our story. It was basically our customers were my sales agents. I was one of the top sales guys in the company, but I wasn't the world's best prospector, but I had the world's best prospecting machine, which was all my customers were my super fans, and they were promoting me to other business owners. And some of the cases were doing overflow work for them. And he says, man, you got to talk to Freddie D because you need to use the same software that we're utilizing it because then we won't have any data exchange issues and we can give you more work. So my sales was in some cases 30 minutes and most of the process was filling out the paperwork because the owner basically said, what's it going to cost me? How fast can you get it in here? Because Jack said, I need to get this stuff. And there was no presentation, no nothing. Got on there, put the quotation together, used their fax machine to fax it to corporate in Minnesota, and deal was done. So let's talk about that a little bit, is how can businesses really use stories of their customers to become their super fans to promote more growth for that business?
So one, it's a great explanation. And I think what's important to note is your customers were your storytellers in that place, right?
Correct.
If we look back historically, think about two things. When we think about storytelling and branding, right? Storytelling through time has been a way to share identities with people, to pull people together, to pass on information, things that would protect each other, right through how to improve life and spirit, religious context, everything else. The stories were how we passed things on to the next generation. Now, as we go forward and we look at where we are today with media and technology, it's not a far-reaching stretch to realize that 92% of customers want advertising that tells stories to them because they want that shared identity. They want to know how it impacts their own life. And that's kind of the magic moment, right? If you can create a story that shows somebody how you connect with them and how it impacts their life, which is what your customers were doing for you, that's what we do for our customers now. And that's really where businesses can benefit dramatically from having a great storytelling plan.
Right. Yeah. And it really goes down to involving the team to share the story so that internally the team shares the story with prospective customers, existing customers, partners, suppliers, distributors, etc. And so everybody, you create a full ecosystem of everybody involved into the story. And so they're in turn sharing the story to the people that they're talking.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of elements in here. One is, and we'll do this a lot, I always encourage people to come through, and whether it's with us or somebody else or just themselves, figure out what your tone of how you talk about with people, right? What is that supposed to sound like? Are you happy? Are you serious? Are you an authoritarian kind of a company? Or is it something that every brand is going to have a little different take on their tone and their voice? And what is your narrative? What is that story? And the story can be one that unifies an overall brand, but then each product can have variations of that that still connect to it. It's about creating patterns and a rhythm behind how you interact with your customers. I bring that up to dovetail your point about how you work with your own sales team, your own coworkers, and the broader team, as well as your customers. If you think of that ecosystem today, if you have a good foundation, you can train people and show people internally how to talk. And then you can create those same patterns and rhythms with your salespeople and the other advocates, your customers. But also, when we're talking about mass media, social media, paid advertising, television advertising, everything out there, having that same foundation, then you can also promote it at a broader reach, right? So depending on, as a consulting business, I promise, for me, one of the best things is what customers are evangelists for me and how they're out there talking about my business and bringing in new business for me. In a lot of B2B businesses that are like that. But as they want to expand, or maybe they have a specific product or service that people can use a website to purchase, well, word of mouth is great, but you have the option at that point to sell and scale at thousands or even millions at a time. And so you want to make sure that story is getting out to all those people, because it's hard to have such a huge group of evangelists that are always talking about you. So you have the opportunity to really get out and drive and grow that exponentially. And so that's where it's really important to kind of build that foundation so that you have that internal and external all working together and kind of proselytizing for you. It's a kind of a magical thing.
Yeah, that's why I call them business superfans.
Yeah.
So they're brand advocates on steroids. So, they're the next level of your brand advocates, and your evangelist business superfans is the way I look at it, are the diehard fans. So like on a sports team where the faces are painted, the jerseys, everything else, those guys are lifetime superfans of that team. So share a story, Tim, of how you guys worked with the organization, helped develop their story, and what transpired from all that.
Well, there's a lot of them, and I'll be broad so I don't talk about any particular business or try to give somebody secret sauce so their customers know what they did. But there was a company about a year ago came to us, and they were great in their industry. They were an industry leader, but they were finding that they were losing some market share. They had some smaller competitors coming in and kind of nibbling at them a little bit, which was at the very least annoying. And overall, they did have a story. They just didn't know how to tell it. And so we came in, they needed, it started with a request for a new website. And we said, hold on, let's go back a little bit and figure out what that website needs to do and who it's talking to and what it needs to say. And I think any good web development agency is going to do that. The problem is not everybody's an expert at how to find that story within a business so that everything is tied together in a real cohesive, smart way that customers interact with. So we spent a little bit of time, talked to all the stakeholders, actually got a chance to talk to some customers, and realized that the part of their story that was missing was that they were still a small family-owned company. Mind you, they're hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. So I say that with a little bit of a smile in terms of small family-owned company. But they had just gotten so used to being dominant in the category, they stopped talking about what was really important, which was the experience of the people there. And they've always been very careful, not just being a multi-generation business, but also bringing in experts and experts with a lot of experience that, quite frankly, made them unique, because the competitors were coming offshore sometimes. Very few, if any, were domestic to the US. And they were more about being a marketing machine than quality products, quality service, And that got missed because there wasn't those people that were behind it really helping. So we helped them change and look and sound relevant and current, but also thoughtful and knowledgeable in a way, in a time when people were on autopilot everywhere else. And all they were losing market share to was this really dominant marketing machine that was putting another business or another name in front of them. And that can work, but it doesn't always last, right? Because that's not building an advocate. That's not really building the super fan. And what
Right.
happens when you don't build those super fans, they're just transient and they're going to come and go really quick. So you want to have that. So after we got them live, got everything done, their first 3 months, which is very unusual for that, went about 1,000% increase in new leads and sales.
Wow, it's huge.
Yeah, they actually had to start hiring extra salespeople or customer service people to help take in and ingest all of the calls and what they were receiving and emails and interest in the company. So they've been doing great. Last year, we were helping them with a new media campaign, and week over week, by the end of the year, we're getting about an 1,800% return on their investment.
Wow, that's a huge return.
On ad spend. Yeah. Yeah. If you're spending $1 and getting almost $20 back, I think most people would say that works pretty well.
That works. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a W.
Yeah.
That's cool, because what you guys did was you really took the time to understand the business, and then you really packaged it so that the rest of the world would really understand that business. And when people can relate, like you said, the storytelling, when people can relate to the story and it resonates with them, you've got 60-70% of the sale is done because they're emotionally connected. People make a purchase emotionally, and then they justify it logically.
And that's very true. It's something like 70% of consumers want a story. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just that the 92% that want ads that feel like stories. It's just in order to connect, like, they want that. And there's no reason for us to not give it. Yeah. I was looking for a camping stove kind of fire pit thing about a year ago, and I came across a company with the smokeless fire pit, which we won't give them too much of a shout, but now a bunch of companies have come out with that. But the initial advertising was fantastic because I couldn't stop watching it. I wanted to know how it worked or what it was, because it spoke to me, because it was the story of what a backyard summer night here is like when somebody wants to go outside and have a little campfire and sit out under the stars. But nobody likes to walk away smelling like smoke. So their communication platform was great. The way that they showed people interacting and being outside, I'm going, yeah, that looks like me and my family on a beautiful summer night. And those are the ways. That's when people really start connecting, is when they can see themselves and the benefits that it brings to their lifestyle. Not just, oh, that's a cool benefit, but show me the benefit in context. Textualization is really important when you're telling a story. And it's where most people lose the mark, because they're like, oh, well, this is what it does. This is the benefit of what my product does. However, when you apply context to what that benefit is, now that's where your super fans are excited. They want to talk about it. They want to be part of it. They want that product or that service. That's what we look for in terms of the magic. And I would encourage everybody to look for that when they're trying to figure out how to market themselves and how to talk to their customers.
You did a perfect job of positioning me for my next question, which is, what can a 20-man, 30-man company, what can they do, especially in the beginning of 2025? How can they take a look at what their messaging is and some steps that they should take to look at what's our story, what's our messaging, and how can they do that themselves?
So this is where having a third party sometimes helps. But what I always encourage and what we do no matter what is I sit everybody down individually, from the president to guys on the plant floor, customers, salespeople. I want to hear what everybody says. And the reason we do this, and I call it a discovery session, I'm sure other people call it something different, but I would encourage somebody, whether you bring in a third person or you just assign somebody that's your listener, we'll call it, somebody that you think everybody will be willing to talk to and not hold back on. And that's where the third party kind of helps. Sit down and start asking questions about the business, about the customers, about the products, and start then correlating those as data points, right? So what do the sales force think? What do my customers think? What do the guys on the shop floor think? Really try and individualize that and silo it so that not everybody's talking together. Maybe people don't even know sometimes who's being interviewed, but then take all that down and take a really hard look at it. And I've been a part of very expensive research studies, and it's amazing to me. It's not uncommon to spend $250,000, $500,000 on a study and then come back and have a room full of executives go, yep, thought that. Yep, not surprised by that. Yeah, I knew that. And I'm going, well, why did you just spend all this money if you knew that? And oftentimes something comes out of it that is valuable, but it's usually small things.
Right.
Those can make a big difference. But I think realistically, if we look at and just really internalize and are honest with each other, most businesses know themselves very well. They just don't always think of it outside of whatever that product or service is right in front of them. They don't look at it from other people's perspectives. That's what we try to do when we're working with somebody. And that's what I always encourage somebody else to do is look at those different perspectives and look at them as data points, and then go back and figure out what data points resonate and how and why are they resonating and why did they say this, but they said that. And there might be some follow-up questions, but you'll start to see this idea of why it's made, how people interact with it, how your customers interact with it. And the same thing is true for a service business. You start to see how people are interacting with your team, what they need from you, what the experience of working with you is like. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it frustrating? Is it fast? Is it slow? Like those things all start to come out. And then you can both improve if there's problems, but also shape something really powerful in terms of who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how it impacts your customers. It's basic storytelling: who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's the stuff that you're trying to get to. And when that happens, I promise you, you can start to market yourself in a much, much better way. Those are the things when you look at social media, the brands and companies, even small companies that do it well, they will have a very specific tone. They'll have a very specific voice. You'll know who it is. And the message to the customer, whether it's a service or a product, will resonate because it shows that they understand what you need and why you need it and how it impacts your life, and your business will grow.
Oh yeah, I worked with a company in Michigan. It's been 10 years now. When I started working with them, she was making pot pies. She started working in her kitchen, and she had some web developer guy, and she asked me to take a look at what he'd done, and it really needed a lot of work. So I in turn ended up taking over the web development and improved the messaging, and then gave her some advice as a kind of a business mentor, gave her some insights, told her to start taking your smartphone and create some simple videos. So she would go to the farmer's market and says, okay, it's Saturday and I'm out here and we're here at the farmer's market. We're here till 11 o'clock and we got these pot pies and blah, blah, blah. And she ended up at a TV station, picked her up and did a spot on her because she was regularly posting and just simple stuff. And then what they did was they had an employee that would do a chicken dance because she was selling chicken pot pies. So anybody that had spent over $100, she would do it around in the lobby of the place and they'd film it and they would post it on social media. That took off. So you're talking about messaging, and they were talking about, hey, you come home, you're tired, you don't want to cook. Well, you can get a pot pie and stick it in the oven. It's ready to go. She just took off and scaled dramatically. She opened up a store during the pandemic. Who does that? She ended up taking over the space next door. Last I heard, she's into at least over 40 major grocery stores throughout Michigan and Ohio and surrounding states. But like you just said, their messaging started out just very simple, but it was connecting with the audience, and then took that message and stayed on that message for the last 10 years, and they've just scaled dramatically.
Well, and I think there's a little nugget of advice that you gave her in there that people might not realize, which is if you think about YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, Google, whoever it might be, even your local news station, they are content providers. However, they rely on the user who's creating content, right? So Google has a measurement called the authority score. So how they rank you, one of the measurements is what your authority score is, which they say, oh, on this topic, you are or are not an authority. It's a 0 to 100 ranking. So 100 being you're the best. And it's amazing. A 50 or 60 isn't a terrible score, but it's amazing how hard it is to get to 100. And what's even more shocking is how most companies, if they look up what that score is, it's very low, 20s, 30s, even less sometimes, because what they haven't figured out is Google wants to know that what you're putting out to the world is worth sharing with somebody else.
Right.
Instagram, TikTok, they all do the same thing. The podcasts on YouTube, all of it is how good is the content? How good is the message? It's a major shift. I think I'm old enough to remember what marketing was like 20 or 30 years ago because I was doing it. And companies used to spend $1 million or have $1 million to make 1 or 2 TV spots in a year. That budget is now shifted, and it's how much content can I make every day or every week. It's not
Right.
about making one thing that just gets shared thousands of times in a commercial break. It's every day making good content that connects with your customers. And the algorithms and the platforms all want us to be great content creators. And they're going to share content creators that they deem as being valuable or impactful. So if you're creating stories and you have a narrative, and just like the business you just explained, she had a real story and she had a real narrative, and people loved the fact that she was creating content, even if it was simple. It doesn't have to be wildly produced.
No, it was just very simple. She'd take the smartphone, because I told her, I advised her that it doesn't have to be Hollywood. It just needs to be authentic. So they would be at the store. They'd have a little table and says, hey, we're in such and such a grocery store. It's Saturday. Come on by. We're giving away tastes for pot pies, and you can get them here. So they were promoting not only their pot pies and all the different variations of the pot pies and other things that were the accessories to the pot pies, but they were also promoting the store, because they would announce that they're at this store location. So the store was getting PR out of it. They were getting PR out of it. And the news station said, hey, something's going on here. And poof, she got onto a couple news stations. You can't buy that kind of PR. And it just took right off.
Yeah, you said something in there, authenticity. We talk about it with people all the time. It is the number one thing to start with in terms of special sauce. If your story is authentic and people believe it and connect with it, that's authenticity is the number one thing for sure.
Yep.
It absolutely is. But it just, you're proving the point of being out there, putting yourself out there is so, so important. It matters. One other kind of weird historical context is I've done a lot of work with Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, a lot of big top, large retail stores, right? And there was a time where if a product wanted to get in there, it was very expensive, because one of the hopeful expectations is you were either a viral or just some kind of product that they were like, this is going to be really hot, which was hard to break into, believe me. But the other thing was you had large corporations coming in and going, well, we'll pay for the end cap. We'll pay for all of the in-store displays. We have TV commercials made. You pick this up and we are ready to roll with all of the advertising and anything that you need. And for those retailers, that was gold, because that meant that they didn't have to go and figure out how to promote it and build the buzz around it, right? They were relying on their suppliers to do that. So now fast forward, and we're in this age where you can be an affiliate and help sell people's product online and get a link for it. And those people are creating all of these small micro stories for all kinds of brands. And as a company, there's no reason you can't do that yourself now and have all of that content built and packaged and have a following. And all of a sudden, large companies that would have never talked to somebody like her who was making pot pies in their kitchen suddenly are going, okay, that people like that, people want that, and she has tons of content and tons of people following her. Let's give her a try. And then the product's obviously good. So now all of a sudden sales increase because your audience is increasing. And then to the super fan point, now you've got people also word of mouth talking about it, like, hey, did you try these pot pies? Pretty soon everything's blowing up because the whole machine is working together. You've got your advocates, you've got your social media, you've got brands helping you. That's when it all comes together.
Yep. Good stuff. So as we wrap up here, Tim, tell us a little bit about, let's go over some of the services again that you provide and what would be an ideal prospect for your company, I should say.
Yeah, it's a great question. We do have people that come in with specific needs. Customers that come in and say, I need a new website, or we want to run some ads. But I think the best customers, the best engagements, and when we spend a little bit of time and work with somebody, consult with them and say, okay, let's build out your narrative. Let's really, and maybe it's for a product, maybe it's for a market expansion, or maybe it's for the entire business. It just really depends. But once we get through that, then we can really help you walk through that, navigate the how to create content, where to put content, how to get more people seeing it, how to really build those advocates, how to share and talk to them, how to train your salespeople, how to talk to them. We get into all of that, and that's really what we love to do, because once we can create that for somebody, they do come back. And as a business owner, the best thing to do is get repeat business. So I always start with the story, and everything else tends to fall in place, because once you start working with us, people really enjoy working with us, and we're able to help shape and promote and build their company with them as a partner.
Excellent. Yeah. Because it's important. It reminds me, I worked recently with an interpreting and translation company. And what we did is we got everybody on the same page to talk about the story. The business had been around for 30 years. And so we know the stuff. We're working with large companies, hospitals, and judicial systems and stuff like that. We worked with an agency, and we redid the website 3 times to improve the messaging every time, because it went up there, and then we got feedback, and then we made more tweaks, eventually to where we got a final website that was actually because of the story that we put onto there, that was attracting prospective customers. And we were now doing what I would call attraction marketing versus prospecting. People were coming to us and finding us, and then making the decision to reach out to us based upon the messaging that we had. So storytelling is very important.
Well, and I think you've got all kinds of little nuggets sprinkled in there. I think that's a great point. Prospecting is hard. And we've done our own, we've worked with customers who are like, hey, do you have ideas on how to prospect? But prospecting is, nobody really wants it.
It takes work.
It's hard. But
hard.
It's really hard, and it can be very deflating too. When you think of the percentage of prospecting that works, I mean, you're talking very low numbers. If you talk to somebody that's getting 20% returns on their prospecting, whoever they are, listen to them, because they must be very good at it.
Right.
Because most people don't even break 10. They're the low single digits. But when you get that story that matters, and you get people coming to you, and you get that traction, so much easier, so much more effective in terms of how you spend your money, because people don't realize prospecting can be very expensive for a consumer product. You could, on a good day, you could be anywhere from $50 to $150 per customer to attract them. B2B, you could be upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 to attract a new customer, depending on the product.
Correct.
And so if you can get your marketing working, and get those stories working, get that traction working, and get that cost down, that's pure money in your pocket.
Yep. That's how I was able to scale that company. People heard about us, and they would come and they would look at it and say, these guys seem to know what they're doing. Let's give them a call. That's all we needed, was them to make the call on, and then take it from there. So good stuff.
For sure.
So Tim, as we wrap up here, how can people find you?
Well, our website is loretold, LORETOLD.com. You can also look me up on Instagram with both Lore and just Timothy Kalinowski. You will find me right away, and send a link. I'd love to connect with people. Love to even do a little coffee talk. I love networking and just hearing what other businesses have going on. And I always do that to make sure that I'm keeping sharp and helping businesses that may become clients later.
Do you have an offer for our listeners that they can utilize?
The offer that I usually give everybody is I will always do a 2-hour consultation, free of charge, just to get to know somebody. And I always leave that conversation with a little bit of free advice on what I'm hearing, what I might be seeing, depending on what they send in.
It's generous, 2 hours.
It's very generous. What's funny, not everybody takes me up on it, and that's okay too. I always wish everybody the best of luck, but for 2 hours, if we can connect, I will give you a little bit of free advice. A lot of times those people become our best customers, because they're very engaged and they want to make a difference and grow their business. I very rarely run into somebody that just wants 2 hours of free advice and isn't really interested in growing their business or taking the conversation further.
Right. Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure having you on the Business Superfans podcast. And for our listeners, check out Lore as an agency that can definitely help you create your story and take that story out to the world. So Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to having you on the show down the road.
Perfect. Thanks, Freddie D. Really appreciate it. Good luck.
All right. Thanks.
We hope you took away some useful knowledge from today's episode of the Business Superfans podcast. The path to success relies on taking action. So go over to businesssuperfans.com and get your hands on the book if you haven't already. Join the Accelerator community and take that first step in generating a team of passionate supporters for your business. Join us on the next episode as we continue guiding you on your journey to achieve flourishing success in business.